14 didn't make it on this study guide for whatever reason, so don't worry about it for right now. Number 15, what coordinates best represent the location of a point K on the coordinate plane below? So point K is here. I start with going over to see what my X value is going to be. That's my first number in the ordered pair. So I go over, and it's in, and then when I go down, there's no dash right there, but it's in between -6 and -8, which would be -7. So when I go over here to my possible choices, I can automatically mark off C and D because I have to go over. My X value has to be -7. And then I go down, and when I go down, I need to go across to see where it hits, and it hits at -4. So letter A. Number 16, an eagle is flying 30 feet above sea level and spots a fish swimming 2 feet below sea level. What does 0 represent in this situation? So we're talking about above sea level and below sea level, which would mean that 0 would represent sea level. Number 17, the point 39 lies in which quadrant? So if I draw my 4 quadrants and then write what my ordered pairs are representing, I can look and see point 39 is positive, positive, which would be in quadrant 1. Question number 18. Match the description with the correct inequality. Weight in an elevator must be less than 2,000 pounds. So we have less than. Our variable is W for all of them. So W, and then I look for less than, and then 2,000. A ton is 2,000 pounds. So if it's saying something is that amount, that would be equal. So W equals 2,000. The pool must hold at least 2,000 gallons. So we have W is greater than or equal to 2,000. The scale can hold up to and including 2,000 pounds. So W is less than or equal to 2,000. And my car weighs more than 2,000 pounds. So W is more than or greater than 2,000. Number 19, order the following integers from least to greatest. So we look at our negative numbers first, and we look for the number that would be furthest to the left. It's kind of the opposite of what we think it would be. We have -41, -51, and -38. -51 is the smallest, so that would have to be first. And I can automatically start looking at my options and marking off a couple of them because I know it has to start with -51. And then after -51, I would look between -41 and -38. -41 would be further to the left, so it would be next. And if I look at my options, it only has one option that would work, which is letter C. George wrote an integer. The opposite of George's integer is -53. Which of these statements about George's integer is true? So if the opposite of George's integer is -53, before even looking at any of these, we can think about, well, that means the integer would be, that he wrote, would be 53. So now we can look at these statements and see. The integer is 53. That's true. We just figured that out. The integer has an absolute value of -53. That's false because absolute values are never negative. The integer is -53. Again, that's false. We decided it was +53. And the integer has an absolute value of 53. That's true. Question 21. Which letters shown below on the number line also have their opposites labeled? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, -1, -2, -3, -4. So X and Z, X is at -2, Z is at 3. Those we definitely know are not opposites. They aren't the same distance from 0. X and Y, X is -2, Y is 0. That doesn't make sense. WX and Y. So W and X, -3 and -2, that doesn't work. So the only option we have left is W, Y, and Z. W and Y aren't opposites. W and Z, -3 and +3. So W and Z are opposites. But then I have Y, and Y is at 0. So if I think about what is the opposite of 0, it's 0. So technically, 0 has its opposite labeled. So the answer is letter D. Number 22, which two integers are opposites? So I'm looking for a number that's the same, that's positive and negative, which would be A, 3, and E, -3. Which sets of numbers show opposites? -5 and 3 is false, 0 and 2 is false, -5 and 5 is true, -3 and 4 false, 12 and -12 is true. Kevin compared the absolute values of -10 and 1/8, -9.25, 8 and 3/8, and -12.4. Which number has the greatest absolute value? So you have to be careful here because it's asking which number has the greatest absolute value. So I have to find the absolute value of each of these numbers. So the absolute value of -10 and 1/8 is 10 and 1/8. -9.25 is positive 9.25. 8 and 3/8 would be 8 and 3/8. And -12.4 would be positive 12.4. So now I'm comparing the positive numbers, which would be 12.4. But my answer is D, -12.4, because it's asking which of the numbers given are or has the greatest absolute value. So the answer is letter D. Part B, explain how you arrive at the answer in Part A. That's what I did here. I found the absolute value of each number and then compared to find the greatest value. Number 25, order these absolute values from greatest to least. So I have 6, 9, 12, and 20. And it's greatest to least. So it would be the absolute value of -20, the absolute value of 12, the absolute value of -9, and the absolute value of 6. Number 26, 4 points are plotted on the number line. Write the absolute value of each point. Letter A is at -6, so the absolute value, the distance from 0 is 6. Letter B is at 4, the distance from 0 is 4. Letter C is at -2, absolute value would be +2. And letter D, absolute value of 3 is 3. Number 27, mark all true statements about absolute value. The distance from 0 to a number is its absolute value. That is true. We can mark that. Opposite numbers have a positive and negative absolute value. That is not true. Opposite numbers will have the same absolute value. That is true. And the absolute value of -2 equals 2, and that is also true. Number 28, drag the numbers so their absolute values are ordered from least to greatest. So on this one you can't drag and drop, but your order, we're doing least to greatest. So the absolute value would be 8, 2, 6.33, 4.75, and 3. So I'm taking the numbers and putting them in order with their absolute values. So I'm going to start with the absolute value of 2, and then the absolute value of -3, the absolute value of 4.75, the absolute value of -6.33, ooh, I ran out of room, and then the absolute value of -8. Last question, which number has an absolute value greater than 5? So the absolute value of -6 is 6. So that one would be right. The absolute value of 5 is 5, which is not greater than, so that one can't be right. Definitely not 0, and then the absolute value of 5 is 5, but that is not greater than.